The Iberian Peninsula is an extremely unique and remarkable place. It is a beautiful but unforgiving territory. Wildlife has found many ways to adapt and thrive here, both on land and in the skies. Iberia is most famous for a man-made immense landscape, where wild and domestic animal species share nature's gifts and challenges. Unique forests are the stage for an eternal dance between predator and prey. Due to its isolation, many Iberian life forms have taken new evolutionary paths, widening the tree of life and creating new species of plants and animals. Life here is hard. Temperatures and rainfall reach both ends of the scale through the seasons. But life rose up to the challenge and has created one of the most thrilling and unexpected ecosystems on the planet. The Iberian ecosystems are a true gem of the natural world. On this episode, we will witness fierce confrontations and survival stories of some of the most iconic inhabitants of the peninsula. The Iberian Peninsula is located on the south of Europe, and it nearly touches North Africa. Because of its geographical position, it's a transition zone between the two continents. And that's why it is such a special place. One of the most iconic habitats of the Iberian Peninsula is the Mediterranean forest. Cork and holm oaks are the masters of these magnificent woodlands. And these woodlands are home to unique and endemic fauna, which makes this region one of the main biodiversity hotspots on Earth. The presence of the biggest feline of the forest is enough to make everybody nervous. The Iberian lynx. Perfectly adapted to this environment, the lynx embodies the essence of the Iberian hunter. An apex predator, he roams freely throughout his territory searching for prey. But it hasn't always been like this. In recent times, the lynx came dangerously close to extinction. Habitat loss, poaching, and the lack of prey species was what made it so hard for them to survive. In the beginning of the 21st century, less than 100 individuals lived in only one small territory in southern Spain. Fortunately, in the last 10 years, the population of the Iberian lynx has increased significantly. Nowadays, the total population is estimated at around 1,000 individuals. Thanks to conservation efforts carried out in both Spain and Portugal, we can now hope for better days for the future of this magnificent animal. The recovery of the lynx is a perfect example of how conservation efforts can make the difference. Man's relationship with nature hasn't always been good. Huge areas of natural landscape have been destroyed throughout the ages. But here, tradition tells us a different story. In the very early hours of the morning, there is a great commotion in the forest. These cork oaks seem to be under attack. But these men, like the ones that came before them, are not trying to cut down the trees. What they want is the bark of the tree, the cork itself, the protective layer which guards the tree from extreme temperatures and even from fire. It is only every 9 years that the cork is stripped from the trees and sold almost exclusively to the wine industry for bottle corks. Now, the forest will be left alone for another 9 years, as well as its inhabitants. One could hardly think of a more sustainable relationship between man and nature. Even in the most transformed landscape, nature finds a way to adapt and to thrive. In northern Spain, we can find one of the largest cereal plains of Europe. On these vast steppes, the mosaic of agricultural fields is only interrupted by the great salt lakes of the region. It's summer, and the water has all but vanished. Some of the aquatic birds that live off the lake are still here, though, as their offspring are taking the first steps into adulthood. Despite the scarcity of water, there is still enough food to keep several hundreds of birds around. With a vast array of tools and techniques, each one searches the remaining lake water for food. These lakes are vital for several species that find refuge here. The vast majority live here all year round. But it is in winter, when rainwater fills the lakes, that the large flocks of migratory birds will eventually arrive. But there's always an exception to the rule. This is a lesser kestrel. He's arrived from Africa a few weeks ago. And this is what he came for. The wheat harvest has already started, and a large tractor is reshaping the landscape. This is bad news for insects. Some, like grasshoppers and cicadas, have been feeding on these plants all summer. Others, like this dragonfly, use the vegetation as a safe refuge. But as the tractor advances, the cover is blown. The kestrels follow the route of the tractor in hope of an easy meal. Sailing high in the sky, they just have to wait for the tractor to chase away the insects that are hidden under the vegetation. At this particular time of the year, they have to hunt quite a lot. Luckily, there is no lack of opportunities. This is a good example of how wildlife adapts to man-made habitats. We are now in an old town that was once dedicated to salt harvesting. The people that used to live here are now long gone, and nature has taken their place. The roofs of these ruins are full of kestrel nests, which have here one of the largest colonies in the Iberian Peninsula. Inside the nest, the chicks wait patiently for the next meal. The parents take turns with each other so that they are kept full and satisfied. To be successful in nurturing their offspring, the kestrels must time everything to perfection so that the young are prepared for their first migration. At the end of summer, the kestrels will undertake a journey of thousands of kilometers to sub-Saharan Africa. A true ordeal at such a young age. After the cork stripping, the quietness of the forest is only interrupted by its wild inhabitants. It's not surprising that, with so much space, the largest herbivore of the peninsula finds its perfect habitat here. The red deer. Usually lonely, dominant stags follow groups of hinds during the rut. Big herbivores are essential for the maintenance of a balanced ecosystem. They share this landscape with several other species. From the smallest to the largest, everyone benefits from their presence. Man also took advantage of such a large space to raise livestock. Sheep are one of the most common and abundant species here. The crow song is a bad omen. A sheep has died. Disease got the better of it. But for a scavenger like the griffon vulture, that is more than enough to make do. Their life hinges on the death of large mammals, and a flock of vultures flying in circles is a sure sign of death. Although vultures look for high cliffs to nest and rest, they travel great distances in their daily quest. They take advantage of the hot air currents that come with dawn to rise to great heights almost effortlessly. Here, on this forgotten landscape, it's not long before the vultures find the carcass. They feed in large groups, and conflict is bound to arise. The agitation is visible, and one can feel the aggressiveness in the air. The strongest birds mark their position. As more birds arrive and food turns scarcer, tensions increase even further, and the tipping point seems ever closer. Eventually, everything settles down, and each vulture takes its place in the hierarchy. And, surprisingly, in the midst of this hostile environment, there is even room for romance. an exchange of love glances. The reunion of two mating black vultures. The next generation is on their minds. This species forms stable couples that can last for many years. They spend most of their lives alone, but every year they look for the same partners to breed. While some still feed, they seize the opportunity to consummate their relationship. A reminder that even in the most unlikely places, we can find true love. Summer in the plains of central Spain. The heat is unbearable and the green cloak has dried up. The constant high temperatures make daily activities almost impossible. To stay in the shadow is the only relief from the sun's scorching heat. As water is a rare finding, man started to create artificial pools. Humans create these artificial water holes for their livestock and at the same time help all life to cope with these extreme conditions. And even a small puddle like this can congregate several species of animals. Each one has its own strategy to stay cool. While some drink and splash in the water, others, like some of these partridges, prefer a good dirt and mud bath. Everyone seems to be having a good time. But here, as everywhere else, you should never let your guard down. The landlord is approaching. The smaller inhabitants run for cover. It's a lynx mother and her family. And they, too, are thirsty. A female with 2 cubs is excellent news. These 2 cubs are 6 months old, and they will stay under their mother's guard for another year and a half. During that time, the mother will teach them the ways of the forest. It's crucial for them to learn how to hunt and where to find water. But for now, it seems like the whole world is their playground. In these forests, there is a whole parallel universe, home to a huge variety of small creatures. And the relationship between them is crucial for the balance of the ecosystem. Insects are an important part of this dynamic. To keep the insect numbers in check, there is a whole set of hunter specialists. And this one is waiting for the cover of darkness. The gecko. Geckos are mostly nocturnal animals, so they begin their activities close to sunset. The light fades and gives way to the night. All nocturnal predators begin their nightly routines, and the gecko is no exception. The gecko uses his camouflage to meddle in tree trunks. With surprisingly accurate eyesight, 300 times more sensitive than human vision, the gecko spots a potential prey. But he's not the only one with sharp senses here. Stealth is the ideal escape route. This game of hide and seek is played every night. The gecko tries another approach, but loses the track of his prey. To get a meal here is harder than it seems. On the contrary, some of his cousins manage to take advantage of the human presence. To stay near a lamb is like going to a restaurant. The gecko sees the artificial light as it draws large quantities of almost every type of insect. They just need to stay still. On this wall, it's like shooting sitting ducks. No need to worry about food here. It's an all-you-can-eat buffet. And, ultimately, humans also benefit from the presence of the geckos. In the lowlands of Baixo Alentejo, one of the most peculiar nuptial parades is about to begin. The great bustards have already started their unique display. It is at this time of the year that males have to show what they're worth. The females are around, and they must be conquered. And for that, the males prepare an elegant and also very strange kind of dance, the leg. They inflate themselves and hop around, showing all of their courtship skills. Their flamboyant plumes are designed to impress. The strutting and posturing will definitely lure the ladies. It's hard to resist something like this. Let's hope he gets lucky. This habitat is shared by several species of birds. While some are busy with reproduction duties, others turn their focus to hunting. And this one is on the lookout. These green plains are filled with food opportunities. The Iberian Peninsula is the main stronghold for the black-winged kite in the European continent. Hovering high in the sky and with a highly developed sense of vision, this bird of prey has spotted something. A small mouse, hidden in the undergrowth, has no idea he's being targeted. The mouse, completely oblivious, exposes himself further. The kite pounces on its prey at high speed, and the mouse is too late to react. He will never know what hit him. With a sharp, specialized beak, he tears the mouse apart in a matter of seconds. The presence of birds of prey is very important to keep rodents and other potential pests in check. Just like the gecko, they are powerful allies and help the farmers to guard their crops. Springtime in Alentejo, the most spectacular season on this part of southern Portugal. Blankets of flowers cover the wide open plains, and they are filled with life. Insects are the most abundant animals here, and they come in every shape and size. These pollinators help the plants in their reproductive task in exchange for the sweet nectar which they feed on. It's a win-win situation. The swallowtail butterfly is one such pollinator. But this one is not interested in food. She needs to lay her newly formed eggs. These small and precious spheres are hidden in these leaves for nearly 1 week until they hatch. This little caterpillar has just been born, and she is not alone. Their parents laid several eggs in this plant in order to guarantee their progeny. Caterpillars are born with the instinct to eat voraciously, with the aim of growing and storing energy for the next stages of their life cycle. It is not surprising that their first meal consists of the eggshell itself, which contains essential nutrients for their growth. Despite this seemingly easy start to life, only 1 in 20 of these caterpillars will reach adulthood. Over the next few weeks, they will grow and suffer drastic mutations. And, at last, they can reach their final caterpillar shape. Now, their appetite is more voracious than ever, and they spend all of their time feeding on the host plant. This species is evolutionarily linked with only a few plants, such as fennel or rue. The female lays eggs in the plant, which will serve as food for the caterpillar until the time comes for her to make the cocoon. After about 6 weeks, something doesn't look quite right. The caterpillar attaches its tail to a branch and weaves a silk thread to cradle itself. And that is when a spectacular transformation takes place. After undressing her colourful skin, she reveals the chrysalis. Four weeks have passed, and the chrysalis remains intact at first sight. But something went wrong. The cocoon has attracted an unwanted presence. It is surrounded by dozens of small wasps. Approximately 2 weeks ago, a female of this type of parasitic wasp found in this chrysalis the perfect nest to deposit her own eggs. For the past 17 days, the larvae have been feeding and growing inside the chrysalis. After reaching adulthood, the wasps came out through a small hole. Nature's complexity will never cease to surprise us. In southern Spain, the first rays of sunlight finally reach the hills. This patch of forest has served as the last stronghold for the population of Iberian lynx, and conservation actions are still being carried out today. These shackles were placed here as a way of providing shelter to one of the most important species of Iberian fauna. The European rabbit, native to the Iberian Peninsula and the south of France, is one of the pivotal species of Mediterranean ecosystems. The decline of its population due to a highly deadly virus since the 1970s was the main reason for the drastic decrease in predator numbers across the land. About 80% of the rabbit population disappeared. But now, with the help of conservation efforts, the rabbits are again a common presence in some parts of the peninsula, and once again, so are their predators. Some cautious inhabitants have detected danger. This lynx is looking for his next meal, and a rabbit would be the perfect catch. However, his presence is detected and the rabbit flees. The lynx continues stalking, moving through the landscape with the hope of catching a careless rabbit. He advances silently in the hope of not being detected again. But once again, the rabbit runs away. This is the eternal dance between predator and prey. Only the most cunning and sharp of both will be successful. Near his lair, this rabbit takes no chances and hides in his little man-made fortress. The lynx approaches the den and tries a different strategy. He knows the rabbit is inside, but there is an intricate network of underground tunnels and the rabbit can be anywhere. Trying to deceive the rabbit, the lynx marks all the entries except for one and waits carefully at its side. If the rabbit doesn't smell him, it may come out through the chosen exit. And it can be a very long wait, but sometimes waiting is all there is left to do. Perhaps it's better to find another opportunity. In southern Spain, we can find an intriguing landscape, different from everything else in the peninsula and even in Europe. This is the only true European desert. This untamed territory is characterized by a relentless climate. The mountains to the south of the desert block the humid Mediterranean wind in an area with very little rainfall. Temperatures here break the scale, creating one of the harshest habitats in Iberia. Even so, there is a surprising amount of life here, which becomes more visible with the uncommon arrival of rain. And when it happens, the desert blooms in fresh shades of green. These moments are a rare gift for the wildlife that's settled here. Every creature has to seize this opportunity, as these rainy days will bring a new life to the desert for a very short time. Back to the cork oak forest. Here, life can be easier. A young fox is on a daily quest for food. Hunting is a difficult task, as most prey are too deceptive. Fortunately, he's got his brother's company. Life is hard for these brothers. They must learn to fend for themselves and to use the knowledge passed on by their mother. They split their efforts to cover more ground and increase their chances. There's a scent in the air. The smell of death is recognizable. A dead rabbit is quite an amazing find. This is a jackpot. But a finding like this is too good to be true. The real owner of the carcass is about to claim its prize. The dead rabbit belongs to her. A golden eagle. Right away, the eagle tries to scare the fox, imposing her size and strength. But sometimes, hunger speaks louder than fear. The fox strikes back. Despite his courage, the fox doesn't stand a chance against such a large rival. For the fox, the fight is now lost. The eagle shows who is the true ruler of this land. After taking her stance, the eagle grabs a piece of the rabbit and flies to a nearby perch to eat it. Reluctantly, the fox hides and waits for an opportunity. Finally, the fox grabs his share of the prize. This is intriguing and unusual behavior. The fox is actually one of the eagle's prey species. Predator and prey tolerate each other, at least for now, while there is food for both. And this can only happen in a pristine habitat like this, with plenty of food options available. After a long journey, some rivers form deltas and estuaries right before reaching their final destination. Wetlands are the most productive habitats on the planet. Two of the largest estuaries in the Iberian Peninsula are found here in the south of Portugal. Despite the strong human presence in the region, wildlife has adapted and thrived. These alluvial plains are intertidal zones where the rhythm of the sea sets the pace of life. Here we can find a very special mammal, a group of bottlenose dolphins. This particular group lives in these waters between the river and the sea. It is the only group that is known to do so in the entire peninsula. They are the brightest stars of the estuary. Their presence contributes a lot to the conservation of this protected area. Further to the north, the estuary of the longest river on the peninsula is home to an astonishing variety of birds. The land here is extremely fertile, and human intervention is very intense. Here we can find some of the largest crops in the whole country. The birds that live here, and those who are passing by, have learnt to adapt and to take advantage of human intervention. They wait for the tractors to come by to get an easier meal. They know that these exposed soils are rich in larvae, insects and crayfish. Spoonbills, with the help of their specialized spoon-shaped beaks, are extremely effective hunters. For them, this is a feast. But at the moment, food is not their only concern. It's early spring, and the spoonbills are starting to think about mating. This couple will form a solid bond, and they will build a nest together to care for their soon-to-be youngsters. But for that, they must first find the ideal location. and further upstream, there is just the perfect place. This small island has become a true sanctuary, a bird haven. It is home to hundreds of birds of many different species. There are no predators here. The only problem is the lack of space. This is a crowded neighborhood. The spoonbill couple manages to find a spot. They are the new parents to 2 hungry chicks. The couple feed them constantly by taking turns. Even so, the chicks never seem to be satisfied, and they keep asking for more. It seems that this strategy does yield results. Some species live here permanently, while others are just passing through. This island is a striking example of the explosion of life one can find around the Iberian Peninsula, where nature shows, once again, her extraordinary resilience.